Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and Massachusetts at its most satanic. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at City of the Dead.
The devil has hovered over this city, made it his own. Burn, witch, burn, witch, burn, burn, burn!
This 1960s supernatural horror film, also known as Horror Hotel, follows college student Nan Barlow, who visits the small Massachusetts town of Whitewood to study the history of witchcraft. And boy, she came to the right place, as this is the site where a powerful witch named Llewellyn was burned at the stake in 1692. During her stay at an eerie old inn, she discovers a sinister secret about its owner and the many townsfolk. City of the Dead was directed by John Llewellyn Moxey of films like The Night Stalker and Home for the Holidays in his directorial debut. He also became a prolific TV director in the UK and US for Murder, She Wrote, Magnum P.I., and The Avengers. The screenplay was written by George Baxt of Burn Witch Burn and The Shadow of the Cat, originally as a pilot for a TV series starring Boris Karloff. It was ultimately extended into a feature-length film, but at only an hour and 18 minutes, it's still a breezy watch. This was actually the first production that brought together Milton Subotsky and Max J. Rosenberg, the duo who would soon form Amicus Productions, which was the biggest horror rival to Hammer Films. They formed the company right after this, so The City of the Dead is the unofficial first Amicus film. The film doesn't have Boris Karloff, but it does have a pretty baller cast. City of the Dead stars Sir Christopher Lee from Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and The Wicker Man, Patricia Jessel from The Flesh is Weak, Venetia Stevenson from The Day of the Outlaw, Betta St. John from Dreamwife, Dennis Lotus from Sword of Sherwood Forest, and Valentine Dial from The Haunting. The film is set in America but was shot in England with a lot of English actors, all of whom had to act with an American accent, but you mostly can't tell. Cinematography was handled by Desmond Dickinson of Hamlet and Trog. The film was made for just 45,000 euros, so creative lighting, fog effects, and minimal sets were used to amplify the atmosphere. The crew went so heavy on the fog machines that the actors reported trouble breathing while they were on set. The score was composed by Douglas Gamley, who'd go on to score a ton of Amicus and Amicus-adjacent films like Tales from the Crypt, Asylum, and The Monster Club. The City of the Dead hit theaters in the UK in 1960. It made a small profit but was ultimately a financial disappointment, and it hit theaters in the US a year later with the title Horror Hotel. UK critics were generally lukewarm. Some praised the gothic mood and atmosphere, but thought the story was derivative of earlier Universal or Hammer horror films. US reviews were even harsher, often calling it old-fashioned, slow, or too stagey, though most reviews singled out Christopher Lee as a highlight. But by the 1970s and 80s, it began to circulate on a lot of late-night television channels, and it was eventually reassessed and has become a bit of a cult classic. Today, it's considered one of the more stylish British horror films of the early 60s, being praised for its atmosphere and a certain twist that is quite unexpected. It currently has a 75 and 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, as well as a 3.5 on Letterboxd, so this horrific hotel has some admirers. Thank you so much to my patron Nitpicks for requesting City of the Dead for me to review. I'm truthfully still playing catch up when it comes to British and 1960s horror, so City of the Dead is actually a first time watch for me. And before I jump in, I just want to give a quick shout out to my patrons and channel members. I appreciate y'all so much. And I want to point out that only 15% of y'all watching are actually subscribed, so be sure to go check and see if you actually are if you like this video. I'd really appreciate it if you considered coming back for future videos. I'm always putting out new reviews and rankings, and I've already got over 200 other videos you can check out, so I'd say it's worth it. But hey, with all that said, it's probably time we get started. I hope y'all are ready to burn the witch, cause we're watching City of the Dead. Alright, I told y'all to be ready cause this movie opens with a good old-fashioned witch burning.
Burn the witch!
The year is 1692 in fictional Whitewood, Massachusetts, where a supposed witch named Elizabeth Selwyn has been sentenced to death. Her pyre is set ablaze, and amongst the crowd, her accomplice, Jethro Keene, begs Lucifer to help Selwyn.
Make this city an example of thy vengeance. Curse it! Curse it for all eternity!
She reveals the truth to the crowd as she burns, sharing that she has sold her soul to the devil and she is placing a curse on Whitewood.
Burn, witch, burn, witch, burn, burn, burn.
Now we jump to present day 1960, where university professor Alan Driscoll gives a lecture on Selwyn and other cases of witch hunting. Students like Bill Maitland find it all humorous, but his fiancée Nan Barlow is absolutely captivated by the history. In fact, she wants to visit the oldest New England town she can find for her senior paper to get a sense of what the area was really like. Driscoll advises that the small town of Whitewood is exactly what she's looking for, recommending the Raven's Inn to stay at. Her brother Dick, who is a science professor at the university, is disappointed that she wants to waste her vacation on this mumbo jumbo. Driscoll warns him that some fairy tales are very real though. Apparently, a few years after Selwyn was burned and buried, all of the townsfolk who killed her, as well as their children, were murdered and drained of their blood. Despite Dick and Bill's mockery, Nan is determined to find some hidden clue that could shed light on the truth about Selwyn and witchcraft. On the way, she meets a friendly harbinger that warns her that very few God-fearing people set foot in Whitewood, but Nan pays him no mind. Oh yeah, they got the fog machines working overtime. Next, she offers a ride to this creepy fucker standing alone in the fog. Our girl is distinctly lacking survival instincts.
What is your mission in Whitewood?
Mission? Well, I'm going there to do some research on witchcraft.
Oh shit, apparently this fella is Jethro Keene, who hasn't aged a day since 1692. He's also staying at the Raven's Inn, and Nan is in love with all the decrepit architecture of Whitewood. Keene vanishes out of nowhere, and inside the inn she meets Lottie, a mute housekeeper who looks hella concerned. Now she meets the owner, Mrs. Newless, who looks an awful lot like Elizabeth Selwyn if you ask me.
Is it true that Elizabeth Selwyn was really burnt here for being a witch?
She was?
And do you believe she was a witch?
Come along.
She name drops Driscoll to get the last available room, where she immediately finds a secret hatch in the floor. Newless and Jethro discuss how far some of their guests had to travel for this very special occasion, which they have been planning for quite a while. Meanwhile, the creepy-ass townsfolk watch as she examines the old church. Here she meets Reverend Russell, the blind pastor of Whitewood who has a congregation of exactly 0.
The devil has hovered over this city, made it his own. The people in it are his.
He warns that the devil has taken root here for 300 years and he begs her to leave before it's too late. She doesn't. Instead, she befriends this store owner named Patricia, who is the Reverend's granddaughter. She's actually new in town and just moved here because her grandmother recently passed away. She shares that Driscoll's family actually comes from Whitewood, and also lends Nan a book on witchcraft to start her studies. Nan hears some chanting from beneath her floorboards, but Newless assures her that the cellar was filled ages ago. Right. Lottie tries to write a message to Nan, but her attempt is thwarted by Newless. Nan brags to the witch about all her newfound knowledge. On Candlemas Eve, which is February 1st, which just so happens to be this exact night, a coven of 13 witches performed a black mass to honor Lucifer right underneath the Raven's Inn. Their high priestess, Elizabeth Selwyn, marked a young girl for sacrifice by stealing an item belonging to her and replacing it with a dead bird. They used this ritual to call her to them, and the coven murdered her before drinking her blood at the hour of 13. Then, Nan immediately mentions that her favorite locket has gone missing. It's almost like you've read this story somewhere, Nan. Ooh, I bet this was downright scandalous in 1960. Nan misses out on the late night dance party as all of the guests have headed to some kind of special Candlemas midnight service. I hope there's no vampires. Nan finds a dead bird in her room and watches a group of cloaked figures wandering through the graveyard. You know what, Nan? You better go see what's in that cellar, huh? She gets snatched by some cloaky boys and dragged to a secret corridor that slams shut. She gets laid out on a nice stone slab as Mrs. Newless reveals herself to be Selwyn. What a twist!
6.
No!
But to my genuine surprise, they actually indeed stab Nan and sacrifice her. That's right, folks, our leading lady is dead right at the midpoint of the film. What's crazy is that City of the Dead and Psycho were in production at the same time, so Nan and Marion Crane's deaths did not influence each other. It's just a super cool similarity. Now we jump ahead 2 weeks, where Bill and Dick are concerned that Nan never arrived at a family member's birthday party. Apparently, the Raven's Inn does not exist in any phone directory, which is enough for them to call the cops. A nearby sheriff heads to Whitewood and informs Patricia that Nan has gone missing. Newless tells her and the sheriff that Nan checked out early and there's been no sign of her since. Dick pays a visit to Driscoll, who is fully outed to the audience as a devil worshipper as well. He plays dumb, and Dick plans to retrace Nan's steps in Whitewood to find her.
Well, if anything did happen to your sister and somebody else went along to try and find out about it,
Same thing might happen to them?
possible.
Next, Driscoll is visited by Patricia, who he reluctantly gives Dick's address to so she can return Nan's locket to him. She explains to the boys that Lottie gave it to her in secret. She also explains how her grandfather always warned her about the evil in Whitewood, and the boys realize that Nan was there on the notorious Candlemas Eve. That night, Patricia picks up Jethro on her way into Whitewood. He knows exactly who she is while she's never seen him before. He notes that only a chosen few have the privilege of seeing him. Uh-oh. And he's gone. Both Dick and Bill chat up the gas station attendant on their separate trips into town, the latter of whom gets into an accident when he sees a vision of Selwyn. Dick made it in here unscathed and checks into the same room Nan did, and he also confronts Newless about his sister's disappearance. She gives him a whole lot of nothing though. He's observed by the same batch of crazy as he meets with Patricia, who lets him look over the book she lent Nan. Meanwhile, Newless catches Lottie writing a warning letter to Dick, so Jethro chokes her to death off screen. R.I.P. Lottie. Dick meets with Reverend Russell, who immediately tells him that the town is under the control of Selwyn and her cult of devil worshippers. She's the one who took away his sight, and their pact with the devil gives them eternal life. Bro, why did you let your granddaughter come back here then? And why didn't you warn Nan this straightforwardly and with so much detail? Inconsistent work, father. The coven requires a sacrifice on Candlemas Eve, which was when Nan disappeared, as well as the witch's Sabbath, which is tonight. Patricia finds a dead bird and some woodvine in their home, indicating to Russell that his granddaughter is their next target. Bro, I know you're blind, but how did you not see this coming? She calls up Dick for backup, but Patricia is kidnapped in the middle of the call. Russell tells him to use the shadow of the cross to fight the witches, and then he keels over. Dick runs into the severely injured Bill and loads him into his car, but then he follows the Clokey gang into the graveyard. This whole fucking family was born without any survival instincts. It's here he comes across the grave of his dear colleague, Alan Driscoll. Next, he follows some chanting into the Raven's Inn basement, where he comes across the corpse of Lottie. He confronts Newless and her followers as they prepare to sacrifice Patricia.
We've been waiting for you.
Dick! These are the dead who killed Nan!
Barlow.
Driscoll emerges from the shadows, confirming he is a member of the Coven as well. Dickie pulls out a blicky and fires right at Driscoll. It has no effect, but apparently bitch slaps work just fine, so he's able to steal Patricia from the knife-wielding cultists. They get jumped by a horde of them outside though, and Patricia is prepared to be juiced like a lemon. Bill wakes up and stumbles into the graveyard and grabs a big ol' cross, but Newless yeets her blade right into his back. It's not quite enough to finish off Bill though, so he's able to use the big ass cross to cast a shadow of it onto the Coven members, which lights them on fire. Apparently, the cult needs to wait until the hour of 13 to kill Patricia, so Bill lights them all up before they can stab her. Selwyn was able to flee, but because she failed to offer up a sacrifice, Lucer took back his gift of eternal life. They come across her crispy corpse to end the movie. And that's City of the Dead. Yeah, there's a lot to appreciate here. I'd say first and foremost, I love the atmosphere. Shot in this stark black and white, the film thrives in fog-drenched sets and shadowy interiors. The cinematography evokes an almost dreamlike quality, which honestly feels more akin to Val Lewton's 1940s productions than the bloodier Hammer films of this time. The constant use of mist and chiaroscuro lighting enhances the sense of timeless menace to all the characters. Oh, I especially love the shots of characters driving into Whitewood and glimpsing Coven members within the fog. They feel like specters watching over everything and everyone in the town. And the village of Whitewood itself feels like a character within the film. It's so isolated, insular, and packed with superstition. The gothic setting gives the town a spiritual and physical weight. It feels so claustrophobic and uncanny. The performances in City of the Dead strike a nice balance between contemporary realism and more gothic theatricality. Christopher Lee and Patricia Jessel dominate the screen with their commanding presences, while Venetia Stevenson and Betta St. John give the film a more emotional depth and relatability. There's even a nice tension built between the trained British stage actors and the fresh-faced Americans, which really underscores the film's outsider in a hostile village kind of theme. Nan and Patricia feel like contemporary women, while Driscoll and Newless feel like straight-up gothic time capsules. I do wish that we got more Driscoll at the end of the film, but his slow unveiling as one of the cult members was really well done. And I was really surprised by Nan's death. I just did not expect a film with such an old school vibe to kill off such a smart, likable protagonist midway through the film. It adds a nice level of bleakness to the story, and it makes the Coven seem way scarier. I bet this would make a great double feature with Psycho or with Black Sunday, but that for very different, much more straightforward reasons. I will say that the latter half of the film was a bit less compelling to me, mostly because I just didn't care about Bill and Dick. They were pretty unlikable from the start, but Patricia's presence does help with that. And I definitely have some questions for Reverend Russell, who just decided to live amongst this evil coven of witches that literally took away his eyesight. And he just let his granddaughter come back to town and hang out, knowing that they might sacrifice her at any moment. Doesn't really add up to me. I also feel like the Coven was defeated a bit too clumsily and easily, especially given how clever and conniving they were shown to be. They didn't have the foresight to destroy those crosses in the graveyard that were literally so dangerous to them. But to be fair, hurried endings that kind of just end abruptly were pretty common at this time, and I do mostly like that the magic of the Coven is almost entirely off screen. I was a bit worried when I saw the 78-minute runtime, but honestly I think it was just right. It told the story it needed to without adding in any extra fluff or without feeling super duper rushed. It was, yeah, just right. It's a classy, atmospheric, old-fashioned horror film that features a creepy little village filled with fog, old churches, graveyards, witches, and blood sacrifices. I mean, come on, it's everything you want in a witch movie, aside from maybe broomsticks. It's technically impressive, especially considering the minuscule budget they were working with. All in all, City of the Dead is a haunting, underrated gem of British horror. While slower paced than modern audiences might expect, its atmosphere, clever twists, and gothic intensity make it essential viewing for fans of classic horror and folk horror. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend giving it a shot. Well, that's about it. Thank you so much to my patron Nitpicks for requesting City of the Dead for me to review. This was honestly a really lovely film to check out, and I had a great time with it. But have any of you seen City of the Dead? And if so, what did you think of it? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. And be sure to join me next week as we jump into October with a bunch of different 2025 horror films. Well, that's about it. Thank you all so much for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks so much for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of City of the Dead. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks, y'all.